Meeting for City of Shelton to order for March 19th, 2019. Please rise for the pledge. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Donna, would you like to do roll call?
Yes, I would. Councilmember Dorsey.
Here.
Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
Councilmember CRONCE.
Present.
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Peterson. Here. Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Okay, we have a couple modifications to the agenda tonight. If it's okay with council. One is we're going to add a proclamation at the end of the council report. I will be doing that. And we're going to switch some of the order of the council reports for Chief Moody. So is there any issue with those changes?
No.
Mayor, if I could propose during the public hearing related to the tiny homes for veterans lease that during the public comment period, if there's any question or misinformation that is passed on, that it is corrected this evening before folks leave tonight, so we ensure that there is a consistent and clear message as to the scope and schedule for the project itself. Just waiving the sort of that no back and forth rule, but in those circumstances, if the council concurs with that, I would like the folks here tonight, since we have a packed house, to leave with accurate information. So,
What's council's consensus on that? Okay.
Fine.
And council, if I may, during the public hearing, would like to keep to the no back and forth rule. After the public hearing is closed, we'll keep track of all the questions and answer those in the order that they come up.
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we get into council reports, I will discuss public comment. We have a full house tonight. There's four opportunities to comment. One is a general period that's not an agenda item that will come up right after council reports. There'll be one for general items at the very end, and then there'll be comment periods for our two business items, which is the public hearing on the tiny homes lease and a public hearing on our 6-year TIP plan. So those, and there's cards available. There should be cards out in the narthex, or excuse me, good Lutheran in me, narthex out in the foyer. Please fill those out, and if it's for one of the topics in the business items, make sure you notice number 1 or 2, I believe, and make sure you hand those forward so Donna will call people who, as they want to testify. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Moody.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it getting us out of the way first. It's nice that we have so many residents showing up for the good work of the police department out here. It's wonderful. So first, I'd like to recognize just some exceptional work by some officers. Captain Fiola and I are going to do that, and then we're going to swear in our 2 brand new officers with the agency. So if I can get Krista Harper, come forward. Where's Krista? All right. So every year we have a Reserve Police Officer of the Year, and you get to stand in the pit, Krista. Get up here. Come on. We have a Reserve Police Officer of the Year and a Police Officer of the Year. Unfortunately, Sierra Harper, our Police Officer of the Year, is away at training, so she's not going to be here tonight. But I'll tell you about Sierra first. Sierra was hired with us in August of 2017. Prior to Shelton, she was a police officer in Suffolk, Virginia. She relocated out here, and in her short time here, she's received 3 letters of commendation. Her traffic enforcement was recognized by Washington State Traffic Safety Commission. She exemplifies her mission and values and was nominated by her peers and supervisors as Shelton Police Officer of the Year. And here we have Krista Harper. You need to stand out here and face this way so they can see it. Come on. Uh-oh. Krista was hired as a reserve officer in May of 2018 and graduated from our own regional reserve academy and has logged more volunteer reserve hours than any other reserve officer. She has participated in community functions such as Shop with a Cop and has a contagious positive attitude. She has eagerly volunteered to help in all aspects of our city, and we're lucky to have her. And we all agreed that we have never seen her without a smile on her face. Our Reserve Officer of the Year. Krista.
Good evening. So I have the pleasure tonight of recognizing 3 of our police officers for a commendation for life-saving. Our officers are out there every day, every night, and a lot of time they don't get the acknowledgement for the things that they do. This is one of the things we want to make sure that we put out there. So this goes to Officer Jordan Marine, Officer Warren Olson, and Officer James Belleville. It is a letter of commendation for a life-saving action. On 2/27/2019 at 8:12 in the morning, Officer Marine, Officer Olson, and Officer Belleville responded to the 2400 block of Railroad in regards to a motor vehicle collision. It was reported that the vehicle had left the roadway and was submerged upside down inside Goldsboro Creek. Our officers were the first on scene. Officer Marine, along with the Mason County deputy, entered the water and pulled the unresponsive driver from the vehicle. The driver had no pulse and was not breathing. Officer Marine and the deputy carried the driver over to the embankment where Officer Olson and Officer Belleville were standing. Olson and Belleville began CPR until relieved by medics. At the hospital, the driver regained a heartbeat. According to the ER doctor, the patient's life would not have been saved if not for the quick action of the responding Shelton police officers and the CPR they performed. Officer Marine, Olson, and Belleville embody our department's mission and core values: loyalty, dedication, respect, service, honor, and personal courage and integrity. So I don't think Officer Belleville is here somewhere back there. And the other 2 officers are in training as well, so we just want to acknowledge them and their good work. Thank you.
Officer Belleville, Officer Berry. Let you stand right over there by the table. So, Officer Cody Berry. Cody was hired as a reserve officer in May of 2018, and he originally applied for the position of entry-level officer with us, but was not selected. He then decided he would move here to Shelton from Bellingham to attend the Reserve Officer Academy on his own time. He left his job and home and started the Reserve Academy and quickly rose to the top of his class and was always dependable and ready to volunteer. It was obvious very quickly that this is the type of officer that we wanted. Midway through the Reserve Academy, we offered him a full-time job, and after he graduated from the Reserve Academy, he went right back to school again and was back in the full-time academy, and he just graduated last month from that and has started in our training officer program. James Belleville. Some of you may recognize Jimmy from our code enforcement officer. James started as a reserve officer and graduated from the Reserve Academy here in 2015. He was later hired as our animal control and code enforcement officer in June of 2017, while he continued to volunteer as a reserve police officer, while still working in his full-time position. He was always available to help other duties as assigned by the chief and has helped kickstart our code enforcement program. He received several commendations as a code enforcement officer during his 2 years. He was hired as a full-time police officer last month and will be attending the academy after he completes his initial training. And we have a fiance and a wife to pin a badge. Hop on up. And Mayor, we'll let you give the oath. So if you guys want to just stand right here and let him give the oath, and then you'll pin a badge. This is Jimmy Jr., by the way, okay? So, okay, hold on. Stand on the side. And then you just oath. Mayor?
Yeah. Please raise your right hand. I, state your name.
I, James Belleville,
Do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and to abide by the Code of Ethics of the Shelton Police Department,
and to abide by the Code of Ethics of the Shelton Police Department,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of police officer for the city of Shelton.
discharge the duties of police officer for the city of Shelton.
Congratulations.
If you want to take pictures while they get their badge pinned, go right ahead. You're welcome to stand right over here and take the pictures while they get their badge pinned.
you, sir.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Councilmember
Yes.
McDowell, you may.
I would like to say something. Again, we are now welcoming 2 new officers into the Shelton Police Department. And I've lived down, I say this every time, but I live right down the street and I hear sirens all day, all night, going where they need to go. And I'm just really thankful that we have a great police department.
Well, thank you. I'll let
Yeah.
everybody know that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And for those of you folks who are still in the foyer, there are some seats that open up in the front, and I anticipate we'll continue to see some turnover throughout the evening.
Okay, next, we have a proclamation. We'll wait for the, still 2 seats available if someone wants to come in, sit down.
Taken.
They're taken, sorry. Okay,
Couple over there, maybe?
2 on the left.
2 over here.
There's one over there.
One more over here.
The city council is honored to have a proclamation about the American Legion tonight. And David, you're here to accept? Okay. Would you like to say something? You want me to read the proclamation and would you like to say some more words? Okay. Our proclamation. Whereas the American Legion has been a staunch advocate for veterans and their families since 1919. And whereas the American Legion was founded on 4 pillars of care for veterans, a strong national defense, Americanism, and children and youth. And whereas the American Legion has played a leading role in initiatives and breakthroughs that have affected the lives of Americans in every community, from the U.S. Flag Code to the GI Bill. And whereas the Fred B. Wyville Post 31 has fulfilled the Legion's mission since 1919. And whereas the American Legion is celebrating its centennial in 2019. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, does hereby proclaim March 15th as American Legion Centennial Day, signed this 19th day of March 2019. David. Would you like to say a few words? No? Okay.
No, that's all right.
Would another member like to say a few words?
Everything I was gonna say.
He's coming.
The members stand.
Commander.
I'm his deputy. Sam Severe. We've just now kicked off the effort that we're going to be putting forth on this centennial. And there's several items in the history of Shelton with respect to this charter. And we're going to be working on that with the press and the rest of the people. But basically, it's a big deal. We were the first ones. We were the first ones. The first member that we had, Fred D. Wyville, was a young man in World War I. And he lived to be 21 years old. And that's our building was built with his name, and we intend, excuse me, and we intend to have about a couple of months anyway, carrying on about this, and so you're going to see it from us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, we move to the first period of general comment. This is for things that are not on our agenda. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have our council reports. I'll start with Councilmember Dorsey.
All right. Last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, on the 8th, we all went to a council retreat all day long, and got a lot accomplished. But I'll let these people, we were all there, so I'll let them talk more about it. Other than that, I had my council briefing with Jeff, and today I had a Mason Transit Authority Board meeting, 4 o'clock.
It's been pretty quiet for me as well. We had the council retreat on the 8th, and I've had a couple meetings and my briefing with the city manager, and that's really it.
Yep, and I was also involved with those experiences. Tomorrow morning, I will be attending my monthly Criminal Justice Board meeting, and that completes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Last couple of weeks, we had a LTAC, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting to kind of scope out for next year, get ahead of the game, and also attended the Mason County Housing Authority meeting. And this upcoming week, we'll be attending, I believe, the Crossroads Board meeting. Deputy Mayor?
Last Wednesday, I attended the opioid stakeholder meeting, which is a county-wide initiative the city has a seat on. And last Friday in Bremerton, I represented the city at the Peninsula Regional Transportation Project Organization Peninsula Regional Meeting.
Thank you. Well, my week was pretty quiet. I also attended the retreat last, Friday on the 8th. And briefing with Ryan or with Jeff, and then we had a fundraiser for Lions Club. Excuse me. Sorry. And a few more meetings this week. Excuse me.
Good evening. Great to see a packed house. Civic engagement is awesome. If only every week was like this, or every other week, I should say. Not every week, just every other week. But in addition to all the wonderful things that everybody else participated in, of course, I was at as part of that as well, and attended the EDC board meeting last Thursday and my biweekly briefing with the city manager last Friday. Okay, and that is all.
Now we're on to general public comment. This time, anything that's not on the agenda, you may comment about. Do we have anybody?
The only one I have is for George Sevier, and I believe he just spoke.
I just did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so next, our consent agenda. Has everyone, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on to our business agenda. Our first item, first of all, there is public comment on business agenda. Are both items?
The first item.
First item only. Okay, thank you. So our first business item is public hearing on tiny veterans home lease. So I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to City Manager Knighton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the public that came to see us tonight. Wanted to present the draft agreement for a lease for the Tiny Homes Village, and we're going to have a picture map up on the screen here in just momentarily that shows the area that we're discussing. A little bit difficult to see on that picture, but if you can make out the crosshatched area immediately adjacent to 13th, that's the area that we're talking about. If you have any difficulty, I'd be happy to make you a copy of that and provide that to you once we're concluded this evening. For several months, the city has had open meetings discussing the potential to establish a tiny home village within the city of Shelton. And the project, as we all know, is known as the Veterans Village Project. Following several city council meetings and study sessions where public input has been received from citizens and nearby residents, the city has developed a draft lease, and that is presented before you tonight. The provisions of that lease, I'll just go over quickly. It is a 30-year lease, subject to the property operating a housing program, and there is a provision in the final year to extend that lease for another 10 years if so desired. There is a lease payment of $5,000 per year, beginning in the second year, and that's one of the amendments to the lease that you have a copy of that I'll talk about in just a moment. There is a development of a maximum of 30 tiny homes on the subject property, and if there are any more proposed, that would need to come back to City Council for additional approvals. And the city will be required to review and update our Shelton Municipal Code in order to amend a portion of the code to allow for collection of impact fees at the rate of 25% of what a typical home would be. And the lessee shall develop and present a site management plan for city council review. And during the first 3 years, they are required to submit biannual reports to the city on several pieces of information.
Pardon me, Jeff.
In biannual reports, including several pieces of required information and any other information that the city council might require. And the residency requirements are for veterans within Mason County as a priority. And then following that, there will be prioritization for veterans in adjacent counties that will list in the agreement. A couple of changes to the actual document you have in place over the last couple of days, and I have communicated these with the project proponent. In the lease agreement that you have, there's a 6.3 acre figure cited for the lease area. At this time, when we finished with the survey, we're looking at about 3 acres, just slightly under that, and that's what that crosshatched area is on the map there. One other amendment in section 2, we had the base rent as $5,000 per year beginning the first year. That'll be changed at your second reading, where actions expected to be taken to starting in the second year, as we've agreed, for a total of $145,000 over the life of the lease. And the next two, there was a little bit of a discrepancy, not really a discrepancy, but we wanted to make it more clear in the lease language that the council will see in the final version for a requirement for one lavatory bathroom facility in each unit. And I've talked with the project proponents about that, and that will be provided, rather than in section 10, you see a requirement that says they have to provide those facilities for every 8 units. There will be one in each.
Still not getting to the people in the back.
I don't.
You're maxed out.
The square box is the only thing that has speakers that go out there.
Yeah.
This is for the recording, so if you talk.
Right.
That-
Is that a little bit better? Okay. So the project would also require a lavatory facility and shower for each unit rather than one for each 8 units. And I've communicated with the project proponent, and they're comfortable with that as well. Other than that, I don't have anything further. I'd be happy to answer questions, or at the conclusion of the public hearing, I can answer all the questions for any questions that come up during the public hearing.
Okay. Council questions for City Manager.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had, as I was going through this contract, I had a couple issues. It states services for homeless veterans and other homeless individuals. That, I believe that will be, can you speak on that, Jeff?
Yeah, we will speak with the project proponent and make sure that that's something that they're at least aware of before we make that change, but we can certainly make that change for the second reading.
So it will be stated that that will be the veterans.
Veterans, and I believe you're referring to
Number 1 on page 2.
the purpose and use statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can make that change and make that for your second reading for the final version.
And then there was another one that I believe that it should be the neighboring counties only, which would be the ones that neighbor Mason County, for bringing in
Right.
those neighboring counties, which is Grace, Thurston, Kitsap, and Jefferson, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to make that clear.
I brought that up at a one council meeting, that was not agreed to as far as a priority list of counties after
Right.
Mason.
We
So
talked about Kitsap, right?
we talked about setting a priority list of other counties besides Mason, and
Right,
there was
okay.
not a consensus on that, so that was not agreed to, is my recollection.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's
That's
open
page
for further
4.
discussion tonight, if that is important to the council.
I think it is. Because, you know, if it's not clear on which counties we will reach out to, it could go further out. We want to keep it in the neighboring counties, right?
So we can, after public testimony, we can, council can debate and direct staff on which
Okay.
direction they would like to go.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff or staff?
I had a question for Jeff, but I think he pretty well answered it on the toilet facilities and shower. Was it shower and sink, or what was?
Shower, basin, sink basin,
Okay.
and toilet facility.
Yeah, because I can't hardly see a veteran with disabilities getting up in the middle of the night and hobbling over to the main building.
Other question? I have a question. I have a concern that we have not in the lease, and I know it's CRONCE's mission statement, that it doesn't require recovery housing or whatever you want to call that type of facility. It requires the eligibility to get in, but not necessarily that ongoing process. And I think that's the intent. I'm sure that's the intent, but it's not in the lease. And I would like that actually in the lease. Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. We have a bunch of people who'd like to speak tonight, and I remind you, we have a 3-minute limit. There's a clock behind me. If you can keep it brief and make your point, that'd be much appreciated. If there's someone who's spoken already that's kind of hit your topics, you could just say, I'm with Bob, or whatever you want to say to keep it short. But if you feel you need to speak fully, that's fine, but just be brief as possible. We really appreciate that, and we want to hear your points, but try to keep it brief.
And I think I saw a few cards in the back still. If there's folks who still need to turn in their cards to Donna, if you can just pass them to either end of the tables here, and we'll get them passed up front. I see a few
I
waving.
see Tom in back. He's nice and tall.
Thank you, Terry.
Well,
So, Terry-
Donna will call the name.
Oh, okay.
to speak.
Thank you.
That, all the cards in, at least for people
For
who are
now.
here? Okay, thank you. Okay, Donna?
Our first speaker is Mike Warjon.
And I'd also like to make a request that if you're a city resident, just say you live in the city of Shelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the members of the City Council. That's pretty scratchy. I'm just going to do this. My name is Mike Warjon. I'm with Quixote Communities, and I'm one of the advocates for the new Veterans Village. And I think we're all here because we do care about this community. I admittedly do not live in the city of Shelton. I live on Steamboat Island Road, so it's a short commute for me. But I am very passionate about this project because you know, the reason we're all able to stand here and have this conversation is been underwritten by a number of veterans and military people that over the years have given their lives to allow us to do this. And so that is something I'm very passionate about. It's something I want to see this community really do something to pay that back. A few years ago, there were a group of people living in tents in Olympia, and they collectively made the decision that they wanted to get off drugs, get off the street, leave the life of crime behind them. Another group of people got together and saw the potential in this team, and with that, out of that came Coyote Village. Coyote Village is a collection of tiny homes where people can live that were formerly homeless, and you have to be sober, you have to pay rent, and you have to support each other in your sobriety. You are not allowed to live there if you are using drugs, if you are drinking, if you are violent, so on and so on. It is one of the safest places in that town. And I am so proud that this city council and the people here in front of us have worked very hard to see if we can make the same thing happen here. I'm not going to take the full 3 minutes, but I would ask for the people that are in the audience that are in favor of supporting the veterans in this way, I'd like you to please stand up. And the people in the back. So thank you very much for that. I'll defer my rest of my time to other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Just one reminder, no applause or booing. We're all here to learn people's feelings on this, so let's listen respectfully. And I know we will. Thank you. Donna.
Next is Destin Deniston.
City Clerk, if you could just announce who's on deck, that way we can have folks lined up and ready to go. That's all we're looking for. Thank you very much.
Mr. Deniston. And next on deck is Ethan Kemp.
Oh, Destin Deniston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
but
deck
you
is
get to
behind
speak.
me.
You're
Great.
fine, Sean.
Council, thank you very much for having us all here. This is amazing. I am not a resident of Shelton. I live in Thurston County. I'm the director of Vets Cafe. We have a 120-acre farm there where we do veterans incubator work with agriculture, conservation, forestry. And when I heard about this project here, I was like, this is the perfect kind of match for us to have access to veterans who are in a place where they need a solace spot. They need a place like, oh, hey, we can go camping. We can go fishing there and check in. And I was like, and I started talking with the folks about the project there. I went and looked at the Coyote Village site. It was really exciting. And I thought that this was a great opportunity to do the kind of service work that I'm dedicated to and that we're dedicated to at Vets Cafe down in Thurston County. The veterans that come to Ponza will have access to our site and so many other things that are going on. I mean, I'm looking around the room, there's VFW here, obviously. DAV, I'm sure, may have a couple of people in the house, American Legion. All of these people are vested in support of this project. And that's the thing that I want to lay a platform here, is that this isn't simply a project where, you know, some people are like in need, and you're looking at a community that is regional that wants to stand behind and support this. So I sent a letter to you that kind of talks about that, and I also don't want to take a lot of time because there are a lot of voices. But I do want to say that the city of Shelton has an opportunity here to grow a nascent, or excuse me, to join a nascent energy that is happening in this nation where organizations are coming together to take care of those who took care of our rights, who took care of the ability for us to have a constitution that works for us, to have a government process that allows us to take care of ourselves. And so this entire room is filled with those people. And I want to encourage you to look favorably on this project, because there's a lot of people who, if it happens, will be there to support the folks that are at this tiny home veterans project. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ethan Kemp, and on deck is Kelly Burdette.
Hello, my name is Ethan Kemp. I'm a Shelton City resident. I am a formerly homeless veteran. I now have a home, a thriving small business, and I am a contributing member of this community. Transitioning out of the Navy to civilian life was one of the most difficult things I have ever done. It would have been even worse without help. I was lucky enough to have a solid support network, but not everybody has that. When you join the military, they break you down and rebuild you as a purpose-driven tool. What they don't build into you is how to be a civilian afterwards. To put a point on that, approximately 20 to 25% of America's homeless population are veterans. This is clearly a disproportionately high percentage. We may not be able to affect what happens in the rest of the country, but we do have direct control over what happens in our county and in our city. The majority of veterans are hardworking, mission-oriented team players, and they are thrilled to contribute and have a slice of the normality and prosperity that we fought so hard for. I support Ponza's Tiny Home Project. I think it is just and correct to give back to those who gave their all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Burdette.
And on deck is John Adams.
There she is.
Hi,
Hi, Kelly.
my name is Kelly Burdette. I was a Shelton, Mason County resident for 20 years. I've advocated for housing and for homeless issues for quite some time now. I am not a resident of Shelton right now. I'm a resident of Port Angeles and moving up there to try to find housing. My daughter just found housing there, so. But I'm still, my heart is still here, and to see this project go through. I have been to the state capitol to testify for the rights of veterans and the rights of homeless and human rights. I see it as when you look at other areas that this is, would you install something like this and it actually is successful? That's like what I like to follow. Coyote Ridge is absolutely that, what I've seen. They have shown success. They've shown, like, you know, it doesn't matter what homeless is. It does matter, but the homeless issues in every area might be severe, but we can focus on our community right now. And we can do so much more. These vets deserve it. They deserve everything that we can give them. And I'd just like to thank you all for your service. I am a daughter of a vet too, and it's very passionate for me, so thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
John Adams, and on deck is J.W. Grayson.
Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is John Adams. Thank you. Oh, forgive me. I support investments and services which address our community's needs. I'm a 1985 graduate of Shelton High School. In the 50 years I've been in the area, there's been a lot of changes. Some of the constants of Shelton, our small rural timber community, our family values, supporting our troops, taking care of our own. These things help make us a strong, hopeful, and resilient community. I'm a retired Army officer. I deployed Desert Storm 91, returned 2004, counterinsurgency operations. My son, sitting against the wall over there, was born while I was in Iraq, north of Baghdad. I've seen a lot of soldiers. One thing I can tell you is that people respond to stressors differently. There's no end to the different ways in which people respond to things. Most of us are familiar with PTSD. What most people are not familiar with are the difficulties in transition and reintegration into society after conducting combat operations. And it's these things that are actually have a higher proportion of veterans in which they impact. Again, thank you for considering this project, providing some mitigation to our homelessness in our community.
Thank you, John.
J.W., and on deck is Ricky Grayson.
Good evening, Mayor and the council members. I'm J.W. Grayson, and VFW commander of 1694 in Shelton. And our post supports the tiny homes community here in Shelton. Our community has a numerous of homeless veterans and would benefit from the tiny homes, changing their lives to accept the community members. These homes would help instill confidence and self-respect within the daily living and outreach of our community. I can only imagine the darkness of living on the streets where people shy away from you and fear of the unknown. We owe these veterans another chance for a better life and a place to feel secure. When these veterans serve our country, they serve us all. We are one of them gratitude. We owe them gratitude for the country's freedom. Won't you please reach out to them and vote yes for the tiny homes? Thank you.
Thank you, J.W.
Thank you. Ricky Grayson, and on deck is Michael Lee.
I'm Ricky Grayson. I'm a veteran service officer over at Memorial Hall. We deal with homeless people quite frequently, and it tears your heart out to see this happen. And all they want is a place to call their own. And with my auxiliary, I'm the president of the VFW Auxiliary, we were talking and discussing what we'd like to do for the veterans' tiny homes and to make welcome home gifts for them, if this passes, for them to have something of their own from this community. And so we decided we'd do quilts for them. We're waiting for the first nail to be driven before we sew the first stitch, okay? I have one auxiliary member that's quite young in our auxiliary. I'll not name her. She had to work tonight. But she wrote this and she sent me a message with it, and I will quote what she said. This literally tore the hell out of my heart to write this. And when you hear it, you'll know why. And she changed the name to protect the person in this that she's telling. It's a true story. I met Vicki in a support group for military families about 12 years ago. She came from your typical American Army family. Daddy was a soldier, mom stayed home with 3 kids. You get the idea. Well, as it happens, Daddy's military career came to its inevitable end after a training accident. He was given a medical discharge and sent along his merry way. Unfortunately, he was neither prepared nor properly equipped to transition into civilian life. He was angry, in pain, saw no way to support his family, and he started abusing his pain medications and soon switched to worse. Not even 6 months after his discharge, he left his family with just a note that said, "I am no longer the man you deserve. Sell my things and move on." 2 sentences. That's it. 2 sentences demolished a family and ended a good man. I spent years terrified that I would get a letter just like that from my father. After 4 years of endless worry, I went with Vicki to the medical examiner's office in the next state to identify her father's body. He had been living there on the street, trying to turn his life around, and he just didn't have the means. Unfortunately, Vicki's story is far too common. Soldiers with no idea what to do next slip through the cracks every day. They've already given us their all. A little bit of land so they can recover themselves seems like a bargain to me. I beg you to vote for the Tiny Homes Project and save the next Vicki and her family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricky.
Michael Lee, and on deck is Nyla Legault.
Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Lee. I live in Union. And as people have said about transitioning out of the military and difficulties happen, I was homeless for quite a while. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I've been in Mason County for 15 years, had a lot of legal issues, had a lot of alcoholism, drug abuse, and that's how I met Tom Davis, was through the Veterans Court. This community has a treatment center. There were four of his veterans in there out of 20 people when I went through it. And we have the folks from Memorial Hall, Pete, and everybody that really works hard for the veterans. I think, in my opinion, the last missing piece is stability of housing. And for veterans, for me, that was a big issue. even though I had 100% benefits. And since my 3 years of going through treatment, I now have a 3-year-old house in Union with sweeping views of Hood Canal and Hoodsport. And I went down to Arizona, got my peer support mental health license for working with veterans. And the biggest thing I see is stability. Someplace to lay their head other than the street, couch surfing, something along those lines. That's the biggest piece that I see missing when I talk to other veterans about what do you need, how do you think you can go about getting this. That's what they're asking for. So I've watched Tom go through this process since I've known him for this, and his support for this and all the time he's put in. I think it's a great project, and I really hope you folks go through it. It'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nyla Legault, and on deck is Ed Legault.
I, again, I don't live here in Shelton. I live at Lake Limerick, but I have lots of family here. I've been connected with the town for 35 years. I was so excited when I found out that they wanted to build this little town, this little village for veterans to finally give something back, because they give so much to other people for the safety of this country. I have a husband, a dad, an uncle, a mother, and a sister-in-law. They're all veterans. And I just hope you vote for it, because it's a really good thing to give back to veterans, give them someplace safe to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Legault, and on deck is Alan Emmons.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Ed Legault. I do not live in Shelton. I was born in Shelton, downtown in the old hospital. Went to grade school, first grade through 6th grade in Shelton, except for 1 year at Matlock. Junior high at the old building, high school at the old building. I have roots here. I went to college, then I went in the Navy. When I got out of the Navy, I lived in California. When I retired, I came back to this area because I thought this was a nice place to live and to raise children and my grandchildren. I am a Vietnam vet and a Cold War vet. I never saw combat. I was on an aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. I was in the commissioning crew. The very first person killed on the flight deck was a friend of mine. The day that I was having my mustering out physical, I was down in sick bay doing that, and a guy got sucked into an A7 jet engine. Bloody, bloody messes. Fortunately, through the grace of God and friends and family, I've been able to get through this. I have pain, back injuries, and a knee injury. I keep thinking I am one prescription away from being an addict. I do not take opioids. I've had them prescribed to me, and I refuse. Some people cannot make that decision. Some people have not made that decision. When we see the homeless on the streets, whether they're veterans or non-veterans, everybody talks about how we need to help them. Well, this is the first place we can start. Excuse me. Let's help our veterans, and hopefully this will give us a path, a map, to help other homeless, addicted people. I support fully this project of the tiny housing project. I was just standing here thinking that we're going to hear some opposition, and I heard opposition during the Vietnam War and afterwards. I cannot tell you the things that were said to me and done to me walking in uniform through an airport in Seattle or San Francisco. It was not good times, and I thought those opposition to the veterans was gone. So thank you all for this time.
Thank you.
Alan Emmons, and on deck is Carolyn Gravatt-Ball.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Alan Emmons. I am, for all intents and purposes, the face of the homeless veteran here in Mason County. And I would like to say that I'm going to keep this brief because all I can do is pretty much echo everything that I've heard so far. But I would like to point out that if you give veterans a place to assemble, a place to be safe, and then give them a task, watch it get done. So, I heard a man say once that when we de-roast out of the service, the uniform comes off, but it never comes out. So, give us a chance, vote yes, and watch us thrive in this community, and we will give back so much more than you give us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Carolyn, and then on deck is J.C. Osterberg.
I'm Carolyn Gravette Bowles. I live in Shelton, Christmas Village, as a matter of fact. There's 22 veterans every day that commit suicide. I'm married to a Second World War veteran, and I would hate the thought of seeing him in a position like that. As a United States citizen, people my age have been taught to honor those who have served in our military. To me, honoring them today would mean providing housing, mental health, and jobs. We in Shelton have an opportunity to provide housing for any ex-military who are in need. Right now, in America, we have a high suicide rate among the military. With the offer of a mini house and mental health counseling, maybe here in Shelton we can make a difference. This night, show how we respect our people who give up their time to help us be safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
J.C. Osterberg, and on deck is Nancy Nelson.
Hello, City Council members, mayor, staff, and everyone else in this room. Oh, hey. My name is J.C. Osterberg, and I'm the Executive Director at Coyote Communities. And I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We basically talked with our crew and said, hey, this is going down, this is happening, and just look at all the people that are in this room, people from all different walks of the military. It's just such a supportive group of people, and I know that that's what it's going to be like at the village as well. There's going to be a lot of support group. So I wanted to say is we are wanting to build a tiny house village for homeless veterans here in Shelton. We think we found the perfect spot next to a community college, the hospital, and other local resources. We believe that everyone deserves to have safe and affordable housing, especially those that have served our country and sacrificed so much for us. We are asking that you let us help. Let us help veterans help themselves. We know this type of community living will be such an amazing and impactful approach to letting our veterans in this community start to heal. There are also a lot of local veteran support groups that are in this county, as well as in this room, who are ready to work with us on this front. There will be a lot of support in helping these vets on the next chapter in their lives. And I just want to say again, thank you everyone for coming out. And I know that there are some people in opposition and it can be scary, and I get that. And I would just like to offer, as I have always offered, if you want to come check out Coyote Village, we actually have a monthly tour at the third Thursday of every month. It's actually happening this Thursday at 2 p.m. If you'd like to come see what it's like, it's going to be exactly modeled from that one. Please reach out to me and Amanda, my counterpart. She's a program manager at Coyote Village. We'd love to show you what the community looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, J.C.
Nancy Nelson, and on deck is Rosemary Greenwell.
Nancy?
Nancy Nelson.
First.
Me. I'm Nancy Nelson. I moved back here from Montana, and the place I wanted to live was Christmas Village because I knew it was safe. I knew the people were there, were in my age group. And then I heard about moving the veterans across the street, just right across the street from us. And I thought, well, that, doesn't sound right. But I don't have anything against the military, soldiers are fine. But these are people that are on drugs, they've been homeless, they've been living on the street, they've been uncontrolled, and the majority of the women out in Christmas Village are living alone. It's just not safe. And I don't have a problem with the tiny villages. That's fine. It's the location. The location has to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Rosemary, and then on deck is Jenny Brush.
My name is Rosemary Greenlaw. I'm a resident of Shelton and Christmas Village. I'm the daughter of a veteran. I've had 2 husbands that were veterans. My brother's a veteran. And I'm very disappointed with and ashamed of our city council members. We voted for you because of your proclaimed stand on issues and your pledge to act in the best interest for Shelton, its businesses, and its citizens. Yet here we are, and you're pushing and planning for Pans to build their homeless compound on 13th Street, directly across the street from 2 convalescent and assisted living facilities and a senior retirement community. It's also within a quarter to a half a mile of 4 schools and where the planned YMCA will be. Panza reps said they will import residents from other areas if they can't find candidates here. I don't know how many of you saw the documentary Dying Seattle Saturday night on Channel 4, but it's an eye-opening on where Shelton and other Washington communities may be heading. These grants to build these tiny compounds are coming from the state, and to me, quite obviously, a means to shift some of the homeless problem larger cities have created out into Washington's smaller communities. Putting this homeless village on 13th Street is on Tim Sheldon's political agenda. Thus, he's pressuring the town council to get it through. Tim Sheldon doesn't live in Shelton, so it has no effect on him. And when it goes haywire, he'll be nowhere to be found, but the city council members will be, and the city of Shelton will be held legally responsible. When the next election comes around, we will hold responsible every one of you who vote to allow this compound to be built where presently planned. Again, I ask you, protect Shelton's most vulnerable citizens.
Thank you.
Jenny Brush, and on deck is April Pruitt-Pooler.
I'm Jenny Brush. I live in the county. I do own a house in the city also. I'm not necessarily against this. I'm concerned about the location because you're by schools and where the YMCA is going to be. And I'm concerned that there won't be strict rules. I'm concerned it will turn into a homeless mess, dirty, filthy. I think that if you're going to have this, we have to have strict rules, and I don't think that we can necessarily just depend on the corporation that's organizing this to enforce these rules. I think we need to also enforce them and periodically check that it's working. I think there need to be strict rules with the people that live there, that they have to be vets, that they have to be following the rules. And I think these people also have to contribute to the houses. They have to keep them clean. They're responsible for the grounds and responsible maybe for repairs. They need to earn what we're giving them too, so that they feel maybe ownership. I think that we need to police this, the county, and not depend on the corporation. And I think that also it may be fair that periodically you meet with the people in the community around and see if there's any problems. And everybody, maybe if everybody works together, maybe it can be a good thing. But I think we need to listen to each other, and I think if somebody that's living there is not following the rules, they need out. And I think the rules need to be strict, and I don't think there should be no exceptions. I don't want to see a place of drugs or illegal activities or people in the surrounding areas having, theft or other problems because of it. I'm not saying they're bad people, but we need to make sure that it's a good community for our community also. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
April, and then on deck is Robbie Van Hout.
Hello, I'm April Pruitt-Pooler. I'm currently the chair of our Mason County Veterans Advisory Board. I'm former military, obviously Army. So it's kind of disheartening to hear that some of the comments based on the what if this, what if that, there should be this, there should be that. There are strict rules that are gonna be abided by. There are gonna be background checks, there's no drugs to be allowed, no alcohol, and this is where everybody can support each other. We have already a lot of volunteers saying, hey, I'd love to come teach yoga, meditation, we'll have counselors, we'll have a lot of these things, and I think that most of the concerns are people that just think anybody could walk in there and live there, and they're not. They're going to be looked at, background check, drug test, all that good stuff. And they do pay 30% of whatever their income is, so they are giving back. And if you knew veterans, you know that they are disciplined and they will keep that house clean because that's how we roll. And the other thing is the drug concerns. If by chance there were any history of drugs, I want you to know that it's too easy for veterans to have served, had maybe a little bit of pain or a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and been thrown, opiates, Vicodin. For example, I had fractured my spine in the military. They put me on 60 Vicodin a month, 2 to 3 per day, take as needed. Thank goodness I'm a control freak. I did not like the way they made me feel. I hardly ever took them. But this is what a lot of military goes through when they're in and even when they're out in the VA system. They're giving barbiturates and they're just told to deal with it without really good counseling. I was blessed. Great family, great support system. I didn't go down that dark road. But how many people have seen maybe more than I have seen and had to deal with a lot more than I've had to deal with and didn't have that family support and were given this kind of medication without any kind of consideration. So those people, that's who we want to put our arms around with and give them the help they need. And I believe you guys are doing an amazing job by voting yes for this, and we absolutely need it. And I promise you that our groups all over, we will be making sure it is going to be a really good asset for the city of Shelton.
Thank you, April.
Robbie, and then on deck is Terry Pressey.
Robbie Van Hout. I live out past milepost 14 on the Shelton Matlock Road. I'm not a vet. I've never been homeless, so maybe my opinion doesn't count, but just about every man in my family has been a wartime vet. My daughter is a peacetime vet, and I love vets. But I, like some of the other folks here, are very concerned about this housing, especially after watching the addicts up in Seattle. They're taking over the city. Seattle is dying. I don't want to see that happen in our town. I don't want to see our town get bankrupt. I have a real concern that some of these addicts, I mean, even some of the vets here are saying that they were addicts. Are we going to have a recovery building there for them to try to get well? Are they perpetually homeless? Who is going to run this facility? If it's going to be the government, it doesn't sound like it's going to be very effective. I'm hoping that some private individuals can handle this and enforce the law and provide intervention and get these folks well and get them back into contributing members of society. I'm just so worried about us turning out like Seattle. I work in Olympia. Olympia is turning into a mini Seattle. It's kind of horrifying for most of us folks. I don't think we've ever witnessed anything like this in our history. But that's my concern. I do love vets. I'm standing between two of them. They could squash me like a bug. But I'm just not too hot for this, and maybe you can prove me wrong, but I would like to see vets be able to get well and be contributing members, but we have such a tiny little town. I'm just concerned that it's going to be a successful project. Thanks.
Thank you, Robbie.
Terry, and then on deck is Ethan Mutoli.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terry Presley. I am a Mason County resident. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor. I've had the privilege and honor to be paneled to work with many veterans, their family members, and as a Mason County resident, I'm an active member of Moving Mason Forward and the homeless meeting that we have here monthly. And so I just want to say that I really lend my support to this. I've traveled to Quixote Village in Olympia. I used to have an office downtown Olympia, so I'm familiar with their challenges. This is different. Coyote Village is wonderful. I would say take these women up on, and go out and look at it and see. When I traveled and toured there, I did that with some of our county commissioners. And it is well run, it is clean. Statistically, police love it. They have had significantly less times to go there than anywhere else. So it has been a real jewel in the city of Olympia. I think we should prioritize. Our veterans have written a blank check with their lives, and it's time to give it back. Working with veterans, they are no more violent, and if you've ever been on a military base, part of my career, I spent 6 months traveling 13 states, going to headquarter training facilities, working with the Marines, the youngest, and they are Marines for life. I always know my veterans because it's yes ma'am, no ma'am. They're respectful to us. They're respectful to the things they have. When, as a mental health counselor, when you talk about hierarchy of needs, you need to start with a roof over your head. If you have medications, prescribed medications, where do you keep those? That somebody's not stealing them, you're not losing them. You have dignity. I am very excited to hear that we will have toilets and showers. Not all the facilities do. Coyote Village originally started out. They said, no, we're gonna have a group area. There's many models in many cities on cohabitating and the benefits of it, that people support each other. Look at our Fresh Start housing or Oxford housing. I tell you, it is policed and the residents watch each other. So I just really want to lend my support, and I hope you will as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And on deck is Marilyn Vogler.
Hello, my name is Ethan Matoli. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to say when I came up here. Been listening. I definitely echo a lot of the concerns regarding the tiny homes that have been mentioned. I have a daughter that attends school really close to where this is proposed. She's an athlete, and you know, she's progressing into middle school, and they're starting to run outside and, you know, after school activities. And right now she goes from her current school to the high school for pool and in between, and just having more homeless people. You know, I can't trust her. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I can't trust her. I don't trust the community right now as it is with the homeless crisis. And if it's just for vets, I think that's great. I think it's a bad location though, and there should be some amendments to the proposal that I read online that says, you know, intended for vets, but can have, you know, non-vets attend. I definitely think that should be out of there. But yeah, my main concern is the location, and yeah, as a father of a daughter, it really concerns me, having more homeless people, you know, drawn to this community. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn, and on deck is Lisa Renfro.
Marilyn Vogler, yes, I'm a Shelton resident. I've spoken in favor of this project, I think, to each of you individually. I've thanked those of you who support it. I hope, I've spoken before the council, I hope my arguments are persuasive. I've listened tonight to the experience of veterans, of families of veterans, of people who work with them, and I can't add anything to what I've said that is as compelling or more compelling than these stories. So I'll simply say, please vote yes. Let's get the shovels in the ground and get this project going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Lisa Renfro, and on deck is Mary Loftus.
Hi, yes, I'm Lisa Renfro. I did live in Shelton, and I had sold my house it was supposed to be for the veterans triage, but that didn't happen because they found a better suitable placed with PUD. So I'm hoping this spot will be the suitable place, but I was reading different articles that may make it more soundproof. There was an article that I gave to Tom Davis. I don't know if he could read it on his text. It was through federal practitioners. And it says in there that there's extra funding for beneficiaries, for fiduciaries, for military who need other people to help with their, maybe their financing or their needs for where they're living. So there's dual dollars there to help facilities and staff, to my understanding from what I read, but maybe you can confirm that with, I don't know if Mrs. Frederickson, from the BUDS person from the regional coordinator for veterans, for disabled veterans, I don't know who's in charge of that, but I can get the magazine to, what's her name, Joyce? I just got her business card, the lady who was up here. JC, sorry. So I have other questions too, and I think maybe it could be more so doable because what I heard from another veteran who was in Desert Storm is that the question to, are they serviceable? They should be where they can be served better, but what are you talking about? Their medical needs. So this veteran friend of mine said that if they have a heart attack or something and they go to the hospital here, they could be transported to a military hospital and it would be covered, so it wouldn't create problem for the hospital nor the veteran financially. But who lives right next to their doctor? So, and also in coordination with having extra funding for the facility and for their needs, what types of needs they may need, there's memory loss programs for dementia and Alzheimer patients, which is usually a secondary condition to post-traumatic stress disorder. And Amaritas is a care facility that is really good with that, but maybe they could take that model and have a little tiny town inside of the tiny village where they have a little barber shop, a little ice cream stand, a little TV movie theater where the veterans can congregate together and get used to being in the civilian world if they feel uncomfortable going on the outside per se. But if that's possible, I don't know if they put that in their design or if something they could add later, like you were talking about, maybe doing something later, to make the people feel safe around.
That's timely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary Loftus, and on deck is Bree Sheets.
Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mary Loftus, and I've lived in Shelton for 27 years, and I live about 1 mile from the proposed location. And I'm hesitant to go on the record tonight to say I have reservations about this project because I feel like it's being painted as you're either for the veterans and for homeless or you're against them. And I think that's unfair because I think we all appreciate what our veterans have done. And I have veterans in my family and dear friends. The homeless, I have family that have suffered from those issues. So it's not about do we care. I think the question is this the right program and is this the right place? And I think you're going to hear from those who are willing to come up and be on the record that there are concerns about the location. I think the homeless and veterans are an at-risk population. They've suffered a lot. But we're talking about putting them next to at-risk, vulnerable populations with the elderly, the schools. So I think there's some serious concerns. I don't know what the research has been to see how many homeless do we have in Shelton and Mason County? How many homeless veterans do we have in Shelton and Mason County? And I think it's important to make sure we do research and not just react to these hot button topics, because all of you, I do not envy you. I am so glad I did not run for office, not that I plan to, but you have a very hard job to try to sort through these issues and try to figure out what is best for Shelton. And at the end of the day, if things don't go well and there are issues and someone gets hurt, it falls back on you, and I think that is a very serious responsibility. So I was willing to be on the record to say, let's slow down a minute. Is there another location? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Bree Sheets, and on deck is Pam Stevens. Bree Sheets.
She
Okay.
left, okay.
Pam Stevens, and on deck is Darren Holland.
My name is Pam Stevens, and I live in the city limits. Tonight, we've seen a lot of people talk, and I would just like to point out that a lot of people are not city residents. They don't live here, they don't pay taxes here, and they don't vote here. There's a reason I'm standing before a city council this evening and not a commission. And that reason is because the residents of Shelton wanted to be better represented with more minds and more voices around the table when the city decides to move in one direction or another. And when necessary, we didn't want the voice of a few who may have personal bias or agendas to make the choice for the whole of our city. As I have attended, and when I couldn't attend, viewed on YouTube, the city council meetings, one thing has been very clear. The actual voting constituents of this city who have placed you guys in these seats overwhelmingly oppose this project as it stands. And the number one concern is the location, and I share that concern. I have watched this council have special interest groups paraded before it. Of course, you're going to have employees speaking positively about their employer. Of course, you're going to have nonprofits courting you because you hold in your hand the land they need to proceed with their project. And on top of all that, it's been wrapped up with a bow called homeless vets. So now anyone who opposes it for any reason, be they valid or not, alarmist or rational, anyone who asks questions are bullied, manipulated, and silenced because, oh my gosh, we don't want to, you don't want to talk bad, you don't want to feel or be perceived as against the homeless or against vets. Or maybe look like you're heartless, right? And it puts us in a hard spot. I too want to be on the record as opposing this. The facts, the truth is that we aren't even sure if this solution fits the needs of Shelton's homeless. The project as it stands isn't going to make a dent in the homeless problem because nothing's been done, no research has been conducted to determine how we can effectively help Shelton's homeless. With a label of homeless vets, it allows all involved to give themselves a pat on the back. Who cares if it's a good fit for our city? Who cares if this city is being held hostage to Olympia politics? This is an Olympia solution via an Olympia model via non-local interests and organizations. And at the end of the day, Shelton will still have homeless sleeping and loitering downtown. On January 8th, Andy Conklin came before this council and shared his insights and concerns that the economic development consultant for the city that they had hired wasn't aware of the plan. And once made aware, he said that the value of the land was significantly higher than the last appraised value. To save time, I'll just say I 100% agree with Andy, and I asked the council to review his statements from January 8th. I agree that one of the foremost jobs of this council is to protect the assets and the economic growth of this city. When I have questions the council about the land's value, some have blown me off, and I am disappointed to say that one even mocked me, saying, the land under the power lines is valuable? Yes, look at Fred Meyer. Look behind Fred Meyer.
Thanks,
Look behind
Pam.
the risers.
Hold pause, please.
Darren Holland, and on deck is Jack Smith. Darren Holland.
Okay, Jack.
Jack Smith, and on deck is Reverend Barbara Wiesa.
I'm Jack Smith. I'm a co-owner of a place in Christmas Village. I support the Veterans Housing Project. My one suggestion is move the entrance to Shelton Springs Road and not 13. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Reverend Barb Wiesa, and on deck is Ed Johnston.
Mayor and City Council, thank you. My name is Reverend Barbara Wiesa. I am the Executive Director and Case Manager at Community Lifeline, providing the only shelter in all of Mason County for homeless individuals, including veterans. As a case manager, I serve those veterans every day,
and am currently serving 4 of those veterans. Right now, we know that trauma is at the root of all homelessness and that all that we see through our doors on any given day. That includes our veterans who have served their country and who deserve to be housed. Right now, we have a housing shortage in Mason County. We have no affordable housing, period. And yet we have government that is breathing down our necks to house people. I am in support of this project because this is a starting place for our veterans. This is a place to say that this community cares for our veterans and that we appreciate their service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Johnston, and on deck is Joshua Shushak. Ed Johnston.
Ed Johnston.
I couldn't hear much of what was going on in here out in the other room, so I don't know what has preceded me. My name is Ed Johnston. I live at Island Lake. I am a veteran. I served in Vietnam. We lost 20% of our battery in combat. And I would like to pass out a couple of sheets to the council here. They can make more copies if each individual wants one. It is an idea for homelessness. Can I pass this to someone? Who would I give that to?
Right here, sir. Mr. Knighton, please. Thank you. Thank you.
This is an idea for homelessness. It's an issue that needs to be tackled together, and working in silos will not be as great as working together. There are so many homeless resources out there, and people/agencies unfortunately are working in silos to tackle this problem. We do not need to build more, we need to work together more. We do not need new agencies to tackle the homeless problem. There are ample services for these individuals in the greater Puget Sound region. Examples of how to partner with the city of Covington and Kent are in favor of local churches serving as safe car parking where homeless individuals can sleep in their cars overnight. No nurse service is created. Here it is more about partnering with area resources. The city of Covington has successfully partnered with local area agencies to build relationships and give money to the following agencies instead of starting new services. Agencies like Divine Maple Place, a pre-existing homeless shelter that has now been able to build new housing because of the partnership with local area cities. Nexus, a pre-existing youth homeless shelter in Auburn. Reach, a pre-existing homeless shelter in Renton. Catholic Community Services, day shelter, 24-hour mental health services, and 25 other social service agencies serving needs such as domestic violence, legal assistance, mental health, dental and medical services. There are several resources in Olympia for homeless individuals, including, but not limited to, Olympia Union Gospel Mission. Hot meals are served, and connections to shelter in Seattle at the Seattle Union Gospel Mission. Drexel Health Catholic Community Services provides housing, 86 units. Sidewalk moved over 1,200 people off the streets, out of the shelters, and into permanent housing in 6 years. Family Support Center offering comprehensive individualized case management.
Can you finish up? Time's up.
Yes, sir. I'm on the last paragraph here.
Okay.
Rapid rehousing and search and placement supportive services utilizing house model and for homeless families.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you finish up?
And sir, if you'd like to pass that up to city staff, I'm sure they'd be happy to forward it to council members.
I'd like to make one point that in this endeavor that you're undertaking, drugs will be prevalent. Garbage will accumulate.
Okay, sir.
Very poor location.
Your time's expired, sir.
All right.
Please we'll take your written comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joshua Shushak, and on deck is Vincent Palsy.
Good afternoon, members of council, Mayor Rogers. First of all, I'd like to begin by saying that I really appreciate and admire the leadership that we have in this city and in the 35th district. I would also like to thank Senator Tim Shelton for being the champion of this initiative. I'd also like to say that I'm a sophomore at Shelton High School. I'm very close to that area, and I have absolutely no issue with that complex being put up. I'd also like to say that I'm a member of the Shelton Naval Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps. I'm being taught by a sergeant major in the Marine Corps, and he has served honorably for most of his life. To begin, I'd like to say that I'm not in favor of any government handouts or taxing social programs. However, this is certainly not a government handout. The city will be taking in revenue approximately $5,000 annually, and any maintenance that is supposed to be conducted by this company that is building this complex will be coming from the company. 30% of applicants' income must come from themselves. They must pay 30% rent, and they must be 30% below, they must make 30% below the median income. There's absolutely no reason to fear this coming in to our town. I'd like to make certain that we know that this is not just a Shelton issue. This is an issue that affects our entire nation. And to those of us who say that we should be apprehensive of bringing people in from other areas of this country and state, I hope that you would see the other side and see that these people are humans, that they have fallen on hard times, but there's absolutely no reason to be apprehensive to bring them in and supporting a more cohesive nation. Again, I'd like to thank the council for letting me have this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold applause, please. Thank you.
Vincent Palsy. And on deck is Tom Davis.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Vince Dalsig. I am a case manager at Northwest Resources Drug and Patient Treatment Center. I'm also a combat veteran. I went over to Iraq and came back a changed person. This wasn't always a story. I was also a homeless veteran. Through the therapeutic courts, I was sent to a program with domiciliary called DCHV, which was similar to what we're trying to build here. It's a tiny homes project with TR housing. I'm walking proof that it works. You know, I have a life today worth living, thanks to a program similar to this, so I am in favor for the tiny houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Tom Davis, and on deck is Jerry Strong.
Good evening, council members. Mr. Mayor, Tom Davis. In 2013, I learned that a bunch of veterans, actually 22 at the time, per day were killing themselves out of 104 suicides in the nation. That was unacceptable to me. Up to that point, I really didn't understand the whole scope of the problem. So I flew to Washington, D.C., and I participated in the first ever Justice for Vets mentor boot camp. And at the end of that boot camp, took an oath, and the oath was to come back to my community and start a veterans court and a mentor program. With the help of a lot of people, that has actually happened. So since that time, I spent a lot of time in the jail. They still let me out, so I'm going to probably continue along those lines. And I talk to people who are down beyond what you could possibly imagine, and people who were instilled with a lot of patriotism and pride. The fall from that height is great. Some of the best people I've ever known were in that jail. When you look at this problem, you have to look at the whole problem. You have to look at the services, you have to look at the homes, you have to look at the fact that people can't even avail themselves of, for instance, Veterans Court unless they have a clean and sober environment. So when you're down and out, there's nothing like a good kick in the teeth to send you on your right way. This will provide that. These are decent people. And I know it sounds odd, but some of the best people I have met have been in that jail who are veterans who are on hard times, and they have pulled themselves up. They are not all success cases. So I'm not here to paint that type of a picture for you. But with the right services, they respond easily and better because they have structure, they have discipline, they have recall. You ring that bell, and you're going to be very surprised at what happens. I don't deal with people in the general population, quite frankly, because I don't relate to them quite as much as I relate to veterans. This is nothing to fear. This is a good endeavor. This is things that we will be very, very proud of. And I'll have my hand in this till the day I die. This is something we need to do. I just want to I want to leave you with this message, is that all the fears that I'm hearing from people are just not going to materialize. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Jerry Strong, and on deck is Eleanor Mitchell.
Hey all, I'm not very formal. I wrote this, and everybody has said everything I wanted to say. Homeless vets is not a new thing. I got out in 1979. I spent 2 years wandering around. My family didn't understand what was going on with me. They tried, until I hooked up with some veterans in San Diego that I served with. Was I able to get my feet back under me. I actually lived under a bridge in San Diego. You know, so I wish I'd have had tiny homes. This is something that is extremely dear to me. I'm about tearing up because this is important. We deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eleanor Mitchell, and on deck is Kim Russell. Eleanor Mitchell.
Eleanor Mitchell or Kim Russell?
Kim Russell.
Go ahead, Ms. Russell.
Yes, City Council, Mayor. I'm Kim Russell. I'm a resident of downtown Shelton, and I'd like to address 2 issues that I've heard brought up tonight. One having to do with, is this going to bring more homeless in or homeless in general? I'm a veteran. I'm also a retired Mason Transit bus driver. And so, again, it was very eye-opening to see just how much homeless there is in and around the Shelton area, Belfair area, in and around this county. There's a whole lot more than you probably think. I know I was surprised. If we can start figuring out some way to get some of them off the street, back on their feet, if it takes a couple years, it takes a couple years for each individual. We've got to start somewhere. I've heard issues about not in my backyard. We're always going to hear not in my backyard. Everything from new mills to nuclear power plants to whatever, not in my backyard. So where do we put them? They need to be close to buses. They need to be close to medical. They need to be close to stuff in town. Henceforth, they're going to be close to shopping centers, schools, etc. Second issue I'd like to address, since I do live in downtown Shelton. About 8 years ago, I had a neighbor who had a house with way too many bedrooms than they needed, since it was just the 2 of them, and they had about, I think, 7 bedrooms. So they decided to downsize and go to a smaller house, but instead of selling their house, they decided, without talking to the neighborhood, about turning it into a halfway house for the prison. So much to my surprise, when the neighborhood found out, we were not too happy about it. Again, this is about 8, give or take, years ago. I didn't count the days or the months. In that 8 years' time, the crime rate did not increase. The fears that we had did not happen. Yes, a few people stepped out of line. There was a few times my wife and I at 10 o'clock at night had to get up out of bed because my alarm clock went off at 5 o'clock in the morning. Could you please turn your radio down out in your car immediately? Yes, sir. For them, stepping out of line meant going back to the big house. And in fact, one person stepped out of line and went back to the big house. But the crime rate did not increase like we thought it would. And so therefore, I am in support of this.
Time's up, sir.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
John Tupper, and on deck is George Sevier.
Council, excuse me, I can't get to the dais. If I can just talk from here.
That would be fine, sir.
Okay, I heard a lot of people talk about the location. Well, there's homeless people all over the city. I don't live in the city, but I'm here most days doing business. One gentleman talked about a bunch of shelters up in county and that. Shelters don't take the homeless off, they're still homeless. This project here is the people that are gonna be living in the tiny houses aren't homeless anymore. That's my point. They're not homeless anymore. There's still gonna be homeless people in the city. They're still gonna be up around Christmas Village and the stores down here. But this is gonna take people off the street and give them a start. I'm in favor of it. I'm in the American Legion and I'm a member of the Veterans Advisory Board.
Thank you very much. You only get one chance, Sam.
This is different. I get out of this thing, is that I'm different than a lot of the folks that did serve, who did hit your button.
Don, I think start Sam's time.
I don't know that when it's time to quit now. I'm different than many of the people that have spoken tonight, and had a bit different in my background. I'm a 30-year guy. I spent a full career. But the event that happened when we came back from Vietnam was the same for us as it was for a lot of the folks that have these problems now. If we can take care of that and not worry too much about the police folks failing to do their job, and that's what I heard when we were worrying so much about the neighborhood. This project is a project that's funded at a level in government above us, and it's funded with the idea of we're taking people out of the problem and putting them in an area where they can survive and can contribute. And I solidly say we need to support this kind of effort, not only now for the veterans, because that's a funding that we can't spread around, but for other organizations. We got a whole bunch of them sleeping out behind our building there, and they don't have an opportunity that the vets have right now. But it's only an opportunity for the vets that need it, and it's the county needs to, the city needs to look at the need covering all of those others. So that's my 2 bits.
Okay,
Sam.
thank you, sir.
Randy Lewis, and on deck is Senator Tim Sheldon.
Randy Lewis.
Sorry, I'm old and slow.
And Senator Shelton will be next.
If I'm redundant, I apologize. You can't really hear back there. I think you can pipe sound back there. I'm not sure. I was here at court one time, and I thought they were piping sound back there. Anyway, something to think about next time you have overflow crowd. I just have a couple of points I'd like to make. Again, if I'm redundant, I agree with whoever mentioned this before. I recently ran into two fellows who sold family property for us. They are both very passionately against the tiny homes thing here. Why? Randy, this is valuable property. Well, what I told them was, in my opinion, it's not the mission of the city or any government to maximize the economic value of its assets. Its mission is to be stewards of those assets to benefit the community. And the argument is, well, this isn't the whole community, this is just a small subset. No, this is a group of people that have benefited our community already. Not only our community, but America, everybody. So in my opinion, we owe them this. The second one is, I've heard people come up with stats on, like general stats on the population of veterans. And they say, well, there's X% of this bad characteristics for these veterans. And I'm going to say, well, no, you can't use the stats for the entire population. This is going to be a select group. They're going to be vetted. It's like saying Shelton High School boys basketball team is going to be bad because 70% of the students are bad basketball players. Not true. They're going to select 12 of the best basketball players, so you can't say that's going to be a bad basketball team. Although it is true, none of the teams are going to be as good as the team Kevin and I played on many years ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Senator Tim Sheldon.
Evening, Senator.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words. Senator Tim Sheldon. You know, two great things happened in my life. I was born here in Shelton, Washington, and I've been able to serve you in the state legislature for 29 years. I want to compliment the council and you, Mr. Mayor, for your hard work on this project. You are listeners, and I've learned to appreciate listeners. And I think you've done your homework. Your public works staff has been out looking and vetting particular pieces of property. Darren, your chief, has been talking to chiefs in Olympia and other areas. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity. You know, I have friends on both sides of the issue, and it's going to be up to you what happens now. But I think that what we're looking at here is not an encampment. It really is a veterans village. I think it will be run with the utmost care. I think that you will watch over it just as closely as all these citizens here will watch over it and watch its progress. I would say it's going to succeed. I say we owe it to our veterans to take care of them. We owe it to them for what they've done for us. And, you know, the state is struggling with the homeless issue every day. So we've got bills and appropriations, a lot of things we're doing in Olympia. But I've realized that this all starts with a roof over your head. You're not going to get any services without a roof over your head. You need an address. You need the camaraderie that'll come from working together with others that are sharing those issues, those problems. And I'm just proud to be a part of this, to have something to do with it. And I think in the end, when this is accomplished, we'll look back on it and say, this is one of the best things we ever did in Shelton. It's one of the accomplishments that we all can say we had a part in that was meaningful. In Olympia, when I had a chance to go through the Ponza facility there and talk to people that have turned their life around. I talked to one fellow who's not had an opportunity to be with his kids in years. How do you reunite with your family if you're living on the street? He had a chance to have a Halloween party and have his kids come and stay with him. So a great opportunity. Thank you again for all you're doing. And let's make this the best Vets Village ever made. Thank you.
Hold the clock. Probably 16.
I just have one general comment, so that's it for this public hearing.
At this time, I would move to extend tonight's meeting by 1 hour.
So moved. Okay, favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll extend the meeting till 9:45. Okay, so, should we go back to some issues?
We still have one more public comment.
No.
A general public comment, no more for this public
Do you have a
hearing.
card, sir?
Yeah, is anybody,
Did you
does
have a
anybody else
card?
wish to comment?
Fill out a card.
Yeah, fill out a card. Okay.
What's the name?
I have your card here, but you want to speak to the water shut-off rule, correct?
Well, that's my original thing, but also to this also.
You would like to speak to the tiny homes issue?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
it's your turn.
And anyone else? Damn it. Do you have a card, sir?
I just stand myself.
And then this will be the official cutoff. Turn in your card now, or you'll have to wait till next meeting.
Hi, my name is Steve Graves, and I've been a resident of Shelton for 25 years. I'm also a Vietnam vet. I'm one of the ones that got
Mr.
spit on.
Graves, why don't you hold on just a second? Can I ask everyone, if you're going to leave, please leave. If not, please quiet down so Mr. Graves can speak. Thank you very much. Mr. Graves, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As I said, I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm a resident of Shelton for 25 years. I was one of the ones when I came home, I got spit on. I got called baby killer, got called all kinds of other things. We didn't know what PTSD was. It was shell shock back then. I lost my only son to Desert Storm. And it's been tough. I know a lot of veterans that are homeless. I'm also a member of the DAV here in town. This project, I cannot see any better security in the neighborhood than a bunch of clean, sober veterans. That if they see somebody hurting a child, bullying a child, or somebody else that is getting beat up or anything else, I cannot see a veteran standing by watching it and not taking action. I cannot see better security in a neighborhood than these veterans. I'm also an ex-law enforcement. All right? I took an oath when I went in the service. I took an oath when I was sworn in as law enforcement. Nobody's ever taken those oaths away from me. I will protect my family, my friends, and my neighbors to the best of my ability. And all of these veterans that we're going to get these homes to are going to do the same thing. They're given a chance to have a place to live and an address. And according to the program, they've got to be clean and sober, and they have to work the program. Okay, what's the problem? It's a win-win situation. And I just really would like to see this thing go through. I know this is not the original reason I came here, but I'll save that for the next meeting. But this is very important, and it's something that's very dear to me. Because when you lose your only son, you look out for these other veterans because they're close to you. They're the reasons that you're here. They're the reasons that we're here. Too many sacrifices has been made, and people are not taking care of the veterans as they should. I mean, I know I'm one of them. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And you'll be able to speak again if you'd like.
Pardon?
You'll be able to speak again if you'd like. Just wait, but it's up to you.
What now?
No, kid, no.
Nice try.
Nice try. And we had one more, did we have more?
Yes. Lanny, I'm not sure about the last name.
Okay, let's, go ahead, sir.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Lanny Woodall, Christmas Village. You can see from everybody it's against it is because we don't care if you build the thing, but not in our neighborhood is an issue. There is property clear around this city. If you can't see the forest for the trees, take a drive. There's property. You have a yacht club you can't get rid of. You don't even know what to do. Put them down there and they'll have beach property. We don't want it in our yard. I'm a veteran. I went down in 2 aircraft. I went to work the day I got out of the service. I'm 80 years old and I'm still working 2 jobs. I deal with vets. 12 years at the food bank and another 11 years on my job where I deal with vets that are bikers, 100%ers. Here, there's what the money's making. They make a good money. They get lots of pills. I was an outpatient. I could have all the pills I want, but I couldn't get any M&Ms. The vet's full of it. So what are you people thinking? You just go into somebody's neighborhood and do these things? No, you gotta understand, we don't trust you. Can you tell me right now, have you made up your minds already? I don't hear an answer. You?
It's on the agenda on the 9th or 16th?
Okay, it's on the agenda. You look like you're listening, but you're not hearing me. None of us. Have you got another opinion on the real estate laws? No. No. All right, it doesn't have to be on that street, the entrance. It could go around away from us, away from the schools. We just want a chance to live our lives out. I have 2 older brothers that are double Purple Heart, shot behind enemy lines. They went to work as soon as they got out of the service. I'm tired of sitting here and listening to vets. They need help. Why help somebody that doesn't want to get help? I talk to them every day. I offer them jobs. We have that at the food bank. We don't want to work. No, we don't want it. Then how are you going to get a Harley? There you go, because they don't have to work. They have money here. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Action item, okay, thank you. Council, do we want to discuss the lease and some issues with that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, if you allow me to summarize real quick. There were, from the public testimony, I didn't hear any questions that really we as staff can address, but if there's something that I missed, I'd be happy to try to answer that now. The 2 items that I think the council was going to discuss tonight and give us direction for our second reading is the county priorities. If we are to have priorities from which counties the facility would pull from, following Mason County, of course. And the second one is the recovery housing model. There was some public testimony about that.
Can I go back to what you said before, Jeff?
Sure.
There was, I think the current information about the proposal is out there, but there was some misconception about some of the things that we've decided sometime months ago. And we just need to make sure that everything out there is current. That's my only request. I think it is, but without checking everything that's on every web page, I'm not sure about that.
Sure.
So.
And we can make sure of that. Make sure the information that's coming from the city website and city staff is all current as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I just want to go back to that. So.
Sure.
Okay, so let's tackle the county issue. I guess my thoughts several weeks ago was not to limit counties, but maybe prioritize counties. But That's just my thoughts. Is there any thoughts on either limiting counties, prioritizing counties, having different groups of counties? Councilmember CRONCE?
I think Shelton first, Mason County second, and then I really do not have a priority between Kitsap and Thurston, or even the county that's above us, surrounding counties that touch upon Mason County. I don't really have a preference. Shelton first, Mason County second.
Other comments, discussion? Councilmember
I
McDowell?
agree with that. That's my, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lisco? Any objections?
Just a comment, if,
Go ahead.
pardon my maybe exasperated tone with this, but the frustrating part about this project has been we're continuing to add more language and more definition and more walls and more barriers to this process. We're wanting to list out counties now and prioritize. We've prioritized veterans over all other population in the city of Shelton. We're continuing to pit groups of people who are homeless against other groups of people who are homeless. Like, morally, this doesn't sit well with me. I'm a veteran, my wife's a veteran, okay? Like, I appreciate service, the service orientation and what people have done and what they have sacrificed. But there is a demographic right out of this door that doesn't fit the bill of all the barriers we continue to build here. I want to know what we're doing. I'm struggling to see where this project is going at this point, and I for one, let's yeah, my apologies for being a little exasperated with this, but again, it's yeah, it's a little frustrating at this point to be continuing to add lines to an agreement, and looking at the people who sat out here tonight and continuing to tell us about clean and sober and nonviolent and all these rules and regulations, when we full well know, all 7 of us full well know, that that is the minority population of our problem. We've heard that time and time again. Are we making the best decision with the language that's written in this lease agreement? Are we making the best decision with this project? Think about it.
Yeah, this is just one segment of the homeless population. There are other segments, and we as a council have to understand that this does not solve all of our problems. This is probably not the biggest problem, but there are other battles to be fought. This is the battle we have before us. This is the document we have before us. And homelessness, the opioid subject of addiction, mental illness, is not going away. And I have been, for 7 years, sitting at the table with mayors from every single city in the state. And homelessness and those surrounding issues have been #1 on the plate. This is not a glorified tent city. This is a solution to a problem, and from sitting for 7 years on those committees and groups discussing the issue, from my experience, this is the best solution for this problem, but this is not the only problem. There will be other problems and other ways to deal with them. I am 100% against tent cities. I am 100% against the way Seattle and Olympia, no offense to those wonderful cities, are handling the overall homeless issue. But for Shelton and Mason County, from what I've seen on statewide boards, this is the best option for this segment of that population. And so there will be, tomorrow will be another battle, and we will have to address those other issues.
Okay, the issue before us is we have a draft lease and whether we want to prioritize any counties other than Mason. Deputy Mayor, you have any comments?
Going back to my much earlier conversation surrounding this, I feel very strongly that utilizing a city asset in this way, that obviously city and county residents should take priority, but beyond that, I think we need to allow the providers to make their best judgment as to who will be best helped by this facility, and I don't know that us deciding who and how we can best help them is the job of this council.
Well said. Councilmember Dorsey?
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
Deputy Mayor.
I don't know that we can make that determination for the professionals that know how to run something like this. But, I would say to draw from, like Gary said, Shelton, Mason County, and then a neighboring county.
I think, wasn't Deputy Mayor's point that we let them decide who lives there?
Well, kind of to go to Joe's point, we're hamstringing this process further as we get down the road, and I absolutely think that if this is the path we're taking, that city residents should have first priority and then county residents, but beyond that, I think that we need to rely upon those who are utilizing this permanent supportive housing model to have the flexibility to be successful, and so for me, I would leave it at that.
Other discussion? So consensus, leave the contract as is then, because it doesn't prioritize Shelton, it prioritizes Mason County.
So just to summarize what I heard, to make sure we get it right for your next meeting, priority would be Shelton City residents, then Mason County residents, and then Washington residents.
Vets.
Or vets, I'm sorry.
Then sounds like residents, correct? You say
No,
residents.
no, I'm sorry, it wasn't residents, I misspoke. Excuse me, Shelton City veterans, Mason County veterans, and then Washington veterans.
Councilmember McDowell?
And I'm still uneasy with having number 1 on page 2, the part that talks about and other homeless individuals. We need to.
Yeah, we discussed that. We can remove it. It's not a big deal.
Fix that.
All right, unless I hear objections to that, we'll, as Jeff.
Just so that I can be clear, because I want to leave it here clear. Are you now saying that it's not counties attached to Mason County that will be allowed, it's going to be the entire state of Washington?
The language as Jeff described would be Shelton veterans first,
Right.
Mason County veterans second,
Right.
and the remainder of Washington State as being third.
Anyone from all of Washington State would be listed third.
Veterans.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's not.
Public hearing is closed.
Public
If I may, point of order, this is outside of the scope of the conversation at this point. We would be happy to discuss any of these additional points following the meeting, but at this point, the council needs to stick to the business at hand, and we'd be very happy to hear additional comments later.
So is that the consensus of the council?
I'm a little uneasy just leaving it out a county in eastern Washington or in the far corner of the state. I'm a little uneasy on that. It doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Okay.
Mainly because our Shelton, then Mason, then we should go to the counties closest to us.
All right.
I'm very adamant. I'm going to be very firm on that one.
Can we request 2 versions and have further discussions made with Ponza? We might be able to clarify how critical that might be.
We can prepare 2 different versions of that particular section, present it to council. We do have to publish, well, we can publish both versions for your vote on, I believe the second reading is scheduled for April 2nd. We can publish both versions. I don't believe that's a problem. But then a decision would have to be made at that point which version we go with. And if you have different variables for the other discussion topics for tonight, the version version control make it a little out of control, but we'll do our best to do that.
I'll just speak my views, and that's one I would assume that if there's any connection to that homeless vet near the area, they would be higher priority than someone without any connection clear across the state.
Correct.
I would assume that. I'm getting enough, Jason, you know, that's my assumption.
It's highly unlikely someone from the east.
So that's my
I would
assumption.
find it-
So that's kind of where I would like that clarified. If that's not correct, then I might rethink more like Councilwoman McDowell, that we need to specify that.
And I can work with the proponents' representatives and get you that clarification.
Is council good with that clarification? And then,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay,
Okay?
okay.
If I could just add something, I think there was testimony from, I believe, Tom Davis at one of the meetings we had about this. I just feel like I want to point out that obviously we're talking about a homeless population, and the way that they determine residency is essentially a 90-day residency. So let's say you were a homeless person in Spokane County, which is the great county where I'm from, and you wanted to establish residency in Mason County. Okay, you would come to Mason County, you would wait around for 90 days. Suddenly, you're a homeless person with residence in Mason County as they determine residency. So I just bring that up because I feel like we're spending a lot of time discussing I think as Councilmember Schmidt pointed out, sort of a highly prioritized level of process that PONS is going to have to go through to run their project. And the more levels we put on there, the more difficult it is for them to run their project. And so I just think we should think about, you know, to what extent is it really worth it for us to keep putting on these different levels of requirements.
Can you tell the audience who you are?
Oh, my name's John Collins. I'm the city attorney. I wrote the lease.
Okay, then based on John's, how about we go with the paragraph as Jeff described originally and clarification from Ponza as far as what would actually happen in reality?
Yes.
Does that sound good with everybody? Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Okay, the next topic was,
Next topic the council wanted to discuss was a requirement for the recovery housing model. So it is not just a drug and alcohol test prior to residency, but is an ongoing requirement for continued residency. And whether that's something that the council would like to see included in the lease.
and I'll just speak to that since I brought it up. That's not a concern. It's just, it's not in the lease, but everything in Ponza's documentation and other things, that's their model. And I just want to formalize that in the lease.
Let me ask a question that might clarify what you're getting at. So we have this set of eligibility requirements in the lease, which, as you know, touches on these issues like substance abuse and criminal record. Are you sort of just wondering whether those requirements essentially are ongoing as they are residents? It's not just like a test they have. Yeah. So I mean, it would be pretty easy to just add a sentence in the eligibility requirements to essentially say that these requirements are ongoing and consistent throughout residency. And then if you essentially violate any of those, I mean, that's also pretty consistent with what, from what I understand, Coyote Village does in Olympia. So that would be a really easy addition, as long as I'm understanding correctly that that's sort of what you're getting.
That's my concern, John.
Well, and I think that captures the conversation we'd previously had. And my concern is through all of this, Ponza has a very successful model in Olympia, but they could change their model tomorrow. They could change their board tomorrow. So I think capturing the intent of the agreement moving forward is critical. That said, I don't think that we need to continue to put hoops around this. So I think that seems the simplest solution, and I'd like to move forward in that fashion.
I also think, just to remind the council, there's a separate provision that kind of touches on this issue, which is that in the lease, Ponza is required to submit their operating manual to the council, I believe, once a year. The council doesn't have express approval on the manual, but it's at least an opportunity for the council to provide input. So as we're sort of going forward with this partnership, we're at least going to have, essentially an annual review where we're going to check in to see how they're sort of handling these types of issues.
Yeah, I think Deputy Mayor expressed my concern is if Ponza changed and all of a sudden they became a different type of organization, we would want some type of recourse that would be very specific, I think. As far as some of the treatment, facilitated treatments goes away as part of no longer part of their goal. So
depending on the circumstances, we might be able to terminate the lease, depending on what happened.
Well,
But I'm just thinking legal stuff down the line.
way you described it earlier, John, I think would sound.
Yeah, if that's satisfactory, I think
That's
that's a really easy fix, and I think that's consistent with what they do anyway, so I think that would probably be good for everyone.
Everyone good with that? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure as we draft this that we're capturing all the changes. So we'll have the change that our city attorney just spoke about. We'll have the change, the two different versions of the, or no, I'm sorry, just the one version with the clarification from Ponza. We'll have the change with the acreage amount in the beginning of the lease. We'll have the change for the rent starting in the second year, and then the requirement for bathroom facilities essentially in each unit. And I just want to make sure I capture everything that the council has consensus on for your second reading in a couple weeks.
Yep. Everybody good with that, those changes?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, next, everybody good to continue on without a recess?
Okay, yeah, 1 day recess, thank you.
Okay.
I think we just move on.
Continue on to business item number 2. We'll open the public hearing on Public Works Director has some information on a 6-year transportation plan, so we open that public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Just an update to the 6-year tip that we are required to produce and submit to the state by June 30th of every year. We have given you a copy of that 6-year tip, and just a few highlights to point out from the past years is just prioritizing the projects to reflect what we had agreed upon through Access Shelton. So we have gone back through this entire list and prioritized those 15 projects that are major projects, and then some maintenance type activities and plans that we have scheduled to be done over that time period. The overall change to the city contribution from the last 6-year tip was a change just slightly higher of about 1.7 million, which is an overall change of about 7% of overall city contribution to the projects over that 6-year period. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, comments for Craig? Hearing none. Any public comment on this?
No, there are not, Mayor.
Okay.
Pave away. Pave away.
We'll close the public hearing. Okay, consensus to move the lease, we'll go back one. Consensus move the lease forward to the April 12th.
Second.
April 2nd meeting.
April
Thank you.
16th.
Mr. Chair is just making up dates now for a future council meeting.
It's past my bedtime.
It's past your bedtime.
Okay, consensus on that?
Yes.
And consensus to move this to the action agenda on April 16th? Okay, thank you. All right.
Mayor, point of clarification, the action agenda for April 2nd or the 16th?
The lease for April 2nd, the 6-year plan for April 16th. That's what it's
That's correct.
requested.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, moving on to the action agenda. Any public comment tonight on the action agenda?
No.
Okay, thank you, Donna. So first up, we're back to Riggs with Community Developer Mark Ziegler, information about purchasing some new vehicles.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Yes, Community Development would like to purchase 2 rigs this year. We have budgeted for 2 vehicles, one for the building department as a replacement vehicle and one for the parks department as a replacement vehicle. We've seen our useful life out of the 2 vehicles that would be replaced. Those would be surplus, needs to be replaced with new vehicles put into the fleet for service. If you have any questions, I can answer those for you tonight.
Well moved.
Any?
To clarify, we did discuss at the last meeting a little bit about upfitting the vehicles in both departments, and my understanding is that any upfitting will come out of the operating budget within the department and is separate from these purchases. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, clarification. Any other clarification? Okay, Councilmember CRONCE, you want to move again?
So moved.
Okay. You want-
Second.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second to authorize me to sign a purchase orders CD 01 through 19 or dash 19, not that many trucks, right, Mark?
Correct.
CD 02 to dash 19 for the purchase of vehicles for the Building and Parks Department. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next, Public Works Director Gregory also is purchasing some trucks, so.
So now that Mark did all the heavy lifting on this two meetings in a row, 3 vehicles for Public Works, 1 in EM&R, 1 in the Stormwater Department, and also 1 in the Water Department for purchase through the state contract. And I would be happy to answer any questions that Mark hasn't already answered.
Clarifications or questions for Greg?
Just clarification and with the city manager on this is as we continue to purchase rolling stock or replace existing rolling stock, we're going to be consistent goal that we're going to be having is to be focused on establishing a useful life cycle, and so we're not driving around 1990 whatever's Ford Rangers with jumper cables in the back, and our crews can be effective at getting the job done.
So one of, not the only for sure, but one of the higher priorities for our new finance director when he comes on board beginning of next month, we'll be working with our department heads that own vehicles, including the 3 right over there, mostly them, to put together a program for replacement. So when that comes up, we have the money on hand and it's budgeted for that purpose.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign purchase orders P00005, P00006, and P00007 to complete the purchase of vehicles for the Water Department, Storm Department, and EM&R.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Motion and a second to authorize me to sign purchase orders P00005, P00006, and P00007 to complete the purchase of vehicles for the Water Department, Storm Department, and EM&R. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Last item on the agenda is HR manager. I was looking to see if you're HR manager, Michelle Sutherland, who has information about the Police Guild.
The Shelton Police Guild's collective bargaining agreement for January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2020 contained a reopener for consideration of health and welfare costs for 2019. This memorandum of understanding between the city and the Shelton Police Guild regarding the increase to the city contributions to employees' HRA accounts states that effective January 1st, 2020, the city agrees to provide an additional $100 per month into the employees' HRA accounts. An additional $100 per month per employee contribution to HRAs for those employees covered by the Shelton Police Guild collective bargaining agreement beginning in January 2020. The Shelton Police Guild currently has 17 members. Do you have any questions?
Questions, clarifications for Michelle?
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding by and between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Police Guild to provide an additional $100 per month per employee contribution to the employees' health reimbursement accounts beginning January 1, 2020, and to authorize the city manager to sign the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the memorandum of understanding by and between the City of Shelton and the Shelton Police Guild to provide an additional $100 per month per employee contribution to the employees' health reimbursement accounts beginning January 1, 2020, and to authorize the city manager to sign the memorandum of understanding. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Final general
No,
comment?
I had that one general comment, but I think he decided to
Okay.
do it another time.
So no second general public comment, so we're on the administrative reports, and City Manager Jeff Knighton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to say, a little disappointed that that purchase order for the Public Works truck wasn't 007 instead of P0007 or whatever it was. But other than that, don't really have too much to update the council on or the community on, other than, well, actually, that's about it. Progress on North Clip and Olympic Highway North are going very well, and we expect Olympic Highway North and Alder to be open April 12th, I believe, and closing North Cliff on April 15th. So it'll be a busy April, and it'll be a busy construction season for our Public Works Department. But I have full faith that they'll be able to handle it, and we'll get all those nice new facilities open for the public and ready to handle the transportation challenges we have coming up in the future. That's all I have.
And Jeff, as you mentioned a bit earlier, we have a new finance director coming on board.
We do. We have finance director starting April 8th, highly regarded in the state of Washington, has a ton of municipal finance experience in various cities around the Puget Sound region, and has been a director, served in the same capacity in another city, and we're very happy that he's going to be coming to join us here in Shelton. I think he'll be able to help us out a tremendous amount.
Questions for the city manager?
No.
Hearing none. Items for discussion, further items for discussion tonight? Okay, hearing none. We will adjourn. Our next meeting is April 2nd, Tuesday at 6 p.m.